Using themes and templates in PowerPoint can make your life easier if you know how to use them properly. Now, if you've never used themes before and you've never created your own custom themes and templates, I highly recommend you watch my free tutorial on YouTube, the PowerPoint Template Masterclass. It's about an hour and a half long, and I walk you through step by step on the best principles and how to create themes and templates. Now, in this particular video, what we're really concerned about is changing the theme font for the presentation. So regardless of the design, you can also change the theme font without changing any other element on the presentation. And the way you would do that is you would click on View, Master, Slide Master. Now, by default, PowerPoint gives every text box, no matter what text box you click on, it needs to be tagged to a specific heading or body. That's how PowerPoint works. And if you want your files to work properly, to merge properly with others and apply styles quickly, you need to stick to that hierarchy. So anything that is a title needs to have a heading. You'll notice here how it's tagged heading, and any other text box need to at all times have the body font. And this creates consistency in your presentation and makes it easy to merge. Now, what some people do is they look at this file and they say, you know what, well, I don't like the Calibri light and I don't like the Calibri. I want to use something else. I want to click on my text box and I want to give it some fancy font, and I want to give this one here some other font. I don't know, maybe it's a Rubik. So, and they think that they've made that update. But if you notice, if I click here on the box, that theme is still there. Those two things have not changed. The way to change the theme properly and not do any manual formatting is to go into the font theme settings. And to do that, you're going to have to click here on the Slide Master, and you'll notice that font option is available here. So by default, most presentations in PowerPoint start with the Calibri Light, and if you have applied any of the other custom fonts, themes that come from PowerPoint, chances are they're going to be picking some of the other fonts that come out of the package. Now you can choose some of these, and that's a quick fix. You've fixed that heading and setting. But what if you have a specific font for your company and your brand and it does not match any of these? Now, if you're on a PC, this is an easy fix, because all you have to do is click at the button Customize, and you'll get an option to customize. And when you customize, you'll be able to create some of these custom fonts like I have here. You'll notice that I created this for my client, and I have my own specific one for my brand, the Rubik from Google. So you're going to be wondering now and saying, well, Huayda, you're on a Mac, so how were you able to add these custom themes to the top when you don't have that option? Well, that's a good question. So, and I'm about to answer that for you. But before I do that, I wanted to show you what it looks like for a PC user. So for a PC user, this is what the option looks like. When they click on the drop down, they get that customize option, which I cannot see on my computer right now. And then they get this pop-up. So you'll notice it's a very easy process. All they have to do is choose a new heading font, choose a new body font, give it a name, and save it. By saving that, they are creating an XML file that ends up into the themes folder. So let me show you what I mean. This is the themes folder that by default comes with anyone that has Microsoft on their computer. And that themes folder has in it a theme font. So anytime you create an XML file for the fonts, it ends up here. And anytime you create an XML for the colors, it shows up here. Because if you notice, the color feature works well on a Mac. So for example, if I click on colors, I can choose the Office colors. I can choose some of the pre-existing ones that come from Microsoft. But if I don't like any of them, I can click Customize Color, and I get that pop-up. Then I can go in here, start changing the colors to fit my brand, whatever that color could be. And once I'm happy with the combination, I can give it a name. So let me just test it here, and let's call it purple. So I'm going to save. Now by saving that, this file now is also going to my theme. So let me just show you. You'll notice that I just created this one here. It says purple. So the same thing happens with the font, but that option to create them manually is not available for Mac users. So it's a real pain in the back, especially since a lot of people are using a Mac right now. So, but there is a way around that. Now, if you recall, I just showed you that the XML files end up in these theme folders. So the best way to do that is, if you don't have that option on your computer, is to ask someone who has a PC, tell them to go to their computer, create that file for you. They can choose a heading, a body, give it a name, and save it. And then they can go into their theme font folder folder, get that file for you, share it with you, and once you put it into your theme fonts folder, it's going to work. So that would be the fastest way to do that. Now, if you don't know anyone who has a PowerPoint for a PC, you can still do that yourself, kind of like what I did. I got the code, so let me open that file and show you what it looks like. I'm going to open the Lato font. Lato is a font available from Google, so I downloaded that font on my computer and I created a theme font that I can use for my presentations. So I'm going to right click here and open it, and I'm going to open it with a web editor. So I'm going to use Adobe Dreamweaver. Now, if you don't have a software like that, I'm going to show you later on how you can do that yourself. So you'll notice that the file is pretty simple. Really, there isn't a lot of code in here, so you don't even need to be an HTML coder or a developer of any type. If you look at the file, you're going to notice that the name Lato is available here at the top. So that's telling Microsoft that the scheme font is the name is Lato. Then the second part, major. So you'll see here it's an open code, close code, and this part here is telling Microsoft that the major font, which is the heading, it's Lato, so I can put whatever font name I want, anything staying within the bracket. And the minor part is telling Microsoft that this is the body. So it's as easy as that. You have to change this name here, change this one, and this one. Now, you might be wondering, what is the other code? Because the first line says Latin. So Latin, these are the fonts that support Latin languages. These are the Latin alphabet, like the English, French, Spanish, Portuguese. They all share the Latin alphabet. So if you're a font and if you're working with any of the Latin languages, then you need to put the font name here on the first line. Now, if you're using any of the East Asian, so that's what EA stands for, East Asian font, for example, Chinese or Japanese, and you have a font name that supports these languages, that's where you'll put that font name type. And if you're working with any of the, I think this is called complex script. So if you're working with any of the languages like Hebrew, Arabic, or some of the Thai languages that have some complex script, and you have a specific font type, that's where you'd put the name within the brackets. Now, I don't have any of these fonts, so I cannot show them for you. I always use I'm always mostly working in English, so that's why I'm using a Lato Latin font. So that's now you know how to deal with these. And the same thing with the body. If you have a Latin font, you put it on the same line. And if you have any of the East Asian or the complex script, you put them in this category. Now, of course, there are some other languages, and if you need more detail on this code and how to edit it, I highly recommend you go check out this blog post. That's kind of where I learned about it, and that's where I got my code. So here, John Korchak, I think that's how we can say his name. So thank you, John, if you ever get to watch this. Thank you for sharing your knowledge here. So that's where I got my details. I got that code from this particular website here, and I was able to customize it. Now, he does have a little bit more detail below on complex font themes. So if you're using any of the other languages, I highly recommend you go check out his blog. So check it out here on the video, get that code. Actually, I'll put it below the video so that you can find it, and you can learn how to customize that font yourself. So now let me just show you an example before you customize these 3 elements. I want to show you something critical that you need to look at before you add that font. Now, when you're choosing your font, keep in mind that most people use the bold and italic. So you need to find a font that supports these elements, because if you don't, PowerPoint is going to start forcing some of the elements. So for example, if I click here and I choose, for example, let me show you the Pacifico. Now, Pacifico only comes in one format, because here I am in my fonts folder. Now, if I go into Pacifico, you'll notice that Pacifico only comes as regular. So if I pick that as one of my fonts and someone uses my template and they start to click bold, you'll notice that PowerPoint is forcing it. So it's not really the font itself. Ideally, you need to find a font that supports the bold italic. So let me just go look at something else here. I think, which one? Philosopher. If I click on Philosopher, this is another Google font. You'll notice that it comes in regular, italic, bold, and bold italic. So these are the standards that most software understand. Now, if you pick a font that has something a little bit extra, for example, if I go into Quicksand, you'll notice Quicksand has regular, light, medium, semi-bold, and bold. Now, these light, medium, and semi-bold are not supported by all software, because most software usually go with the regular, italic, bold, italic. So keep that in mind, and let me show show you before you pick what font. So for example, one of my clients wanted to use the Quicksand, and that font created an issue, but that's their brand font. So if I go in here and I click on the Quicksand, notice that PowerPoint is not able. So I'm going to go here, Quicksand. Notice that PowerPoint says Quicksand. It says bold, regular, 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 because PowerPoint is not understanding that this font has light, medium, semi-bold. It's not reading them. So before you pick that font, try to pick a font that actually has variations. So even my Rubik font, when I picked it, so I picked the, you'll notice if I use the heading, it's using Rubik, but instead of saying Rubik bold or anything, I just picked the name itself and I said bold. Why? Because even Rubik, you'll notice that PowerPoint is not reading all the variations. And this is common with some of these new fonts that are designed for the web, and some of the fonts are coded for different computers. So you'll notice PowerPoint, here it's saying there's regular, regular, italic, italic, and that's not the case, because when I go into my fonts folder and I click here on Rubik, you'll notice that Rubik has some variations. So it seems like the semi-bold and italic and the medium, somehow PowerPoint is not understanding them. So now that you know that this is an issue, before you add your font to the code, try to pick a font that has variations, kind of like the bold and italic. Let's say Railway. Now Railway has one of these things. Let's go check out Railway in PowerPoint. If I go into Railway, let's see how that's going to show up. So if I click on Railway, okay, you see, this is a good font because PowerPoint seems to understand all the variations. So if you wanted to use that font, then by all means, you can just take that font and use it correctly. So you'll notice there are no issues here. So let's go back to this code here. Now that you understand which fonts work and which ones don't. So for example, if we're using the Railway, if I want to create one that says Railway, this is a common font. Now you get to decide and test. I would say test because in some cases, if you just say Railway, the file is going to work so much better, because when you take it to PowerPoint, then let me just save it and show you how that would work. I'm going to go say Save As. So I'm going to give it a Railway. Now I don't have that on my computer, so this is going to be a good option because I might need that font. So I'm going to say Railway. And now I've created this XML file. Now if you notice, if I go into View, Master, Slide Master, I'm going to be able to click on the fonts and choose Railway. Let me just see. You can see here it is available. Now this would be the best practice, and the good practice about it is if I click here, I can say bold and not bold. Now if I had picked any and said Railway Light, let me show you what ends up happening. Let's say if I say Railway Light, and I'm going to save this file now. And now let's go back here to the theme fonts and see if I change it back again. Master, and see if it did update. Okay, you can see here it says Railway Light. If I click on it, so now it's picking up. The heading is Railway Light, and you can see it is saying Railway Light. Now, this could be a good option, but you know what's going to happen? Sometimes you'll be sharing your file with someone and they're going to click on it and they're going to try to make it bold, and it's not going to bold very well. So that's why I highly recommend when you're customizing these files is to avoid using the light, medium, semi-bold. I know you might want your file to look fancy. If you're using it yourself, that's okay. But if you plan to share that file with other people, knowing that they might click on the bold and the italic, you're going to create some issues for them. So try to stick to the basics. So that's why I'm going to go back into my Dreamweaver file here, and I'm going to remove that light, and I'm just going to keep it Railway, because that way I can be confident that this file is going to work for most people. So now you might be wondering, well, where is that themes folder? So you can get that XML file and save it there. And the second question could be, well, how do I edit that XML file if I don't have Dreamweaver? So let me answer both questions right now. Now, the location of the theme folders will vary based on the computer you have, if the operating system, and on a Mac, it's a little bit harder to find than a PC. That's because this folder is somehow hidden. So the best way to find it is to create a file and search for it. Now, of course, if you've never done this before, then this folder is going to be empty for you. So you're not going to be able to search for any of the XML files. And the same thing with the colors. If you've never created any color palette, it's going to be empty. If you're on a Mac, in order to search for that file, one of the easiest ways would be to go into the View, Master, Slide Master, go into the color, just create anything. Create a file, let's say call it testing. I'm going to call it testing just so that I can locate this folder. So I'm going to call it testing, and now I know it's going to be called testing XML. So I can go into my computer, and no matter what folder I'm on, I can just say testing.xml. So I'm searching for it, and you'll notice PowerPoint is showing me that file that I just created. That's for the color, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. I'm going to click on it, because when I click on it, you'll notice at the bottom, it's showing me the path. And you can see now why most people cannot find that folder, because it's hidden in those kind of numbered folders that are hard to find. So usually when I can't find it, that's what I do. I just kind of search for the XML file and find it. And if I click now on the themes, you'll notice that I can see my themes color. So here's the testing one that I just created. So I don't want it. I'm just going to delete it. But I just did that so I can locate the folder. And now that you've located the folder, you can go in and get some XML files for the fonts and save them in your themes folder. So that's kind of the easiest ways that I use it, and I hope it helps you. So now that you know where to save the files, you're probably wondering, well, how do I edit it? What if you don't want later? What if you open this file and you were able to open it and you think, okay, I want to change that font. So how do I edit it? So there are various variations. For example, if I click here and say open, you're going to notice that my computer is telling me that I can open the file with Google Chrome, which is correct. I can open it, I can view it, but I cannot make edits and save it again as XML because it generates extra code. The same thing happens with Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint. You might be able to open the file in some cases. You might be able to save it as simple text, but for example, here I have a Word file. You'll notice that I saved it as in PowerPoint. I called it Word XML, so this is using Microsoft Word. But now notice if I try to open this file, I did already save it before. If I open it in Dreamweaver, notice what ends up happening. Microsoft Word has generated extra code, because you remember it was supposed to be a simple code, and now look at all this extra code that was generated by Word. So that's why some of these files don't usually work. Now, some people use text editors. For example, I can go into a text editor, and on a Mac, you have that text editor. You can go File, New. So for example, if I create a brand new file, and if I go into the preferences and make sure that it's plain text, so I want to make sure it's code. I don't want rich text. Rich text means that it has some formatting. You can notice that there is smart quotes. These are the curvy quotes versus straight quotes. So even if I disable everything and just say keep it as plain text, I notice it doesn't work for me. That's because somehow my version of the text editor is always creating curves. So every time I create that quotes, let me just show you here. For example, when I open Railway, you notice these quotes. So somehow some programs make them curvy, and if they are smart quotes and curvy, that code is not going to work for you. So you need specifically to be using a program that specifically works with code. So now, fortunately, there are many free tools you can use on the web. So this one here was recommended on John's blog when he mentioned the code. So you can go in here. It says free download. I've never used it, so I really cannot recommend it. Other people commented on his blog and said that they use Atom, and you're able to download it. It's open source, so you don't have to pay for it, and you'll be able to edit the code as well. So if you feel this is something you might be doing on a regular basis, it would make sense. Or you want to use the Visual Studio, which is part from Microsoft as well, that could be an option. I believe this one is open source as well. Now, of course, the easiest way is if you know someone that has PowerPoint for a PC, they can share that file for you, or you can just pay someone just for an hour or so. They can create all the font families for you and save you time. So really, it's a simple process. You can make it as simple, as complex as you like. In my case, I work with Dreamweaver, so I'm able to create any of these myself, and I create them for my clients. So I hope you found this tutorial helps you, and now you know how to work with PowerPoint themes and font themes. Because if you do any manual formatting, you're going to create some problems for you and for your client. Really, the ideal way is you need to be customizing that font from here and choosing the right font family. So till next time, ciao for now.